Good afternoon, ladies and gents, and welcome to the Poultry Outlook session here at Pig and Poultry Fair. Hope you're all having a great day here so far. ABN, I'm Danny Johnson from ABN, General Manager of ABN. We've been sponsors of the fair, partners of the fair since 2008. A big decision for us to move to the NEC, and hopefully you're having a good first experience of this as the new venue for the fair. So I guess as an intro into this session, I was lucky enough to chair the session 2 years ago, and I was looking back at what were the key topics that we were talking about 2 years ago, and we were talking about disease. We obviously were having challenges with AI at the time. We were talking about labour and labour shortages, and we were talking very much around sustainability, which was starting to be a subject that we were having to focus on as an industry. There's been a lot of change over the last 2 years in the intervening period. It is very definitely an interesting time. Those three subjects are still prevalent in what we're talking about. Disease is still a challenge for us. Labour, whilst it's still there, we've also got as anyone that was listening to the PIP participants before, it's not just about getting labour now, it's also about retaining, educating talent within our industry for the future. And in terms of sustainability, absolutely a focus. Net zero, soil reduction is core in terms of everything that we're focused on through the supply chain. But in addition, we've got some fairly chunky macro issues that we've got to deal with in the current day. So we've got challenging geopolitical environment. We've got higher welfare standards, and which we're having to adapt to, which I'm sure will touch on it, but stocking densities is a key focus, and the race for space is definitely something that we're going to be talking about today, but over the months to come. Environmental planning and land availability is something that, as I was lucky enough to take the minister around a few stands earlier, and is the word of the day is the thing that we're all looking at as a supply chain. Accreditation and standards is a challenge as we look to move and to meet new standards, meet consumer demands and retailer requirements going forward. Cost management is a focus, not just in terms of us making the money to reinvest in our businesses, but also in terms of us being able to compete with increasing imports which are coming into our market, and is a looming challenge for us as we try and meet the requirements from the UK going forward. So, some things for us all to think about, and hopefully over the next kind of 20 minutes to half an hour, we will be able to touch upon some of the ideas in terms of how we look at things going forward. Luckily, within the poultry sector, poultry meat sector, we are in a place where demand is recovering, and there is demand for our product, which is a good thing for us and drives opportunity as well as risk for us. But how are we going to competitively produce an affordable British chicken to meet customer demand and customer standards in the future? And I think as a supply chain, that is what we're looking at. And I think despite all that change, the value of events like this is the one thing that never changes is the value in coming together as a group to talk about these issues, to come together to find the right solutions for the future. So we've got two industry experts today. Justin Coleman from Moy Park will be joining us tomorrow for those of you that are here for both days. And our two speakers today are Ruth Edge and Will Raw. So Ruth is Sustainability Manager at KFC. She has over 15 years within the industry, spanning both food and agriculture. She's held pivotal roles in organisations such as Tesco, ABP and the NFU, so comes with a broad range of experience, broad range of views in terms of different parts of the supply chain. Through her career, Ruth has demonstrated a steadfast dedication to bringing together diverse stakeholders, which is the kind of thing that is super important for us today, across the supply chains to bring meaningful improvements in terms of welfare, environmental sustainability, and producer livelihoods. She's committed to driving positive change, and with a broad background and views, she's going to really add something to the debate today. And then secondly up will be Will Raw, who's a poultry producer. Will operates a family farm, mixed farm, based up in North Yorkshire. Will is a former PIP participant, poultry industry program from the NFU. His farm consists of 250 acres of combined crops, and he has 230,000 broilers. He currently supplies the independent, the wholesale market, to Chesterfield Poultry, and he's vice chair of the NFU's poultry board, and has taken a big role in terms of the industry. Never one to shy back with a view is Will. So we look forward to seeing what he's got to say today. He also sits on the Red Tractor Technology Advisory Committee for Poultry and DEFRA's Animal Health and Welfare Technical Steering Groups. So comes with a broad range of experience and knowledge of the topics for the hot topics for us as an industry, and will give his views on how we move forward together for the future. So with that, I will hand you over to our first speaker, Ruth Edge. Over to you, Ruth.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak today, and thank you for that introduction, Danny. These mics feel very high, just bear with me. Do you think they're designed for somebody that's 5'1", perhaps? There we go, that might be a bit better. Is that slightly better? Yeah, okay. So my name is Ruth Edge. I'm Head of Sustainability at KFC. I have been at KFC for about 2.5 years, and previously to that was at the NFU for 7 years. I'm not entirely sure I would describe myself as an industry expert, but that's very kind. Thank you very much, Danny. So I've been asked to speak to you today about the market outlook of poultry. I'm primarily going to focus on macro trends as opposed to specifics. And just give you also a bit of a flavour as the KFC business. This isn't the kind of thing that we do very often, so we're not particularly well known in that entity, so I'll just give you a bit of a flavour as to what we're about and sort of what our plans are as well. So from a poultry perspective, we source 100% British Red Tractor for our on-the-bone product. We have about just over 1,000 restaurants within the UK. It's about double the size of Nando's. Not that I'm trying to dig at our Nando's colleagues who we get on very well with, but we are about double the size of them. And we have massive ambitions to grow within the UK. We're owned by a global company called Yum, who also own Taco Bell and Pizza Hut as well. The UK has been identified as a considerable growth market for that business. And we want to build 500 more restaurants between now and 2030. So the reason I'm saying this is more restaurants ultimately mean more chicken. And that's the direction of travel for us as a business. We want to grow. Chicken is absolutely core to our business. It's in our name, it's in our DNA, it's part of who we are. I put a picture of the kernel up there. The kernel is still very, very important to us as a business as well. The way in which chicken is made is the chicken comes into the restaurant as a raw product and is all breaded in restaurant and then fried and cooked fresh in restaurant. That is the way the kernel did it, and that is the way that we still do it as a business. And that is really, really important to us in terms of the quality of product that we're bringing through and the quality of product that we're offering to our customers. And obviously chicken right from the farm level is the starting point of that, whether it be welfare, sustainability, whatever it might be, the chicken right from the start is crucial. We sell the chicken on the bone, as I mentioned, is 100% British. We sell about 18 million buckets of that chicken a year. It remains to be kind of our hero product. So although we see customers straying more towards into the breast meat side of things and breast meat becoming ever more popular, it is still very much what we redescribe as our hero product. And what a lot of people think of when they think of KFC is that classic bucket that we've put up on the screen. So I'm going to move on to, apologies, the format of this slide has not worked, so apologies. We had a last minute change on slides and clearly it hasn't been checked. I've just put up here two graphs, and I'll point to them in a minute. And the reason I've put this up here is I had an interesting conversation with a farmer actually at a children's party a couple of weeks ago. And he said, well, what are you doing now in industry? What job do you have? And I said, oh, I've just become head of sustainability at KFC. And he said, oh, sustainability, is that a real thing? Like, what a load of old guff. And it kind of made me reflect a little bit in terms of, and I don't want to appear patronising and I don't want to preach to the converted, but absolutely, sustainability is a real thing, and it is something that is going to hit all of our businesses. It is not just corporate guff. It absolutely is going to have an impact on every single one of us in the room. So on the left-hand side, you have got the record temperatures for the global record temperatures for air, and on the right-hand side, you've got the record global temperatures for oceans. You'll see on the left-hand side, 2023 was a record year, and for both of those side of things, the increased air temperature at times was reaching 1.48 in 2023. That is very, very close to that key figure of 1.5. So when we talk about increase in sustainability and global warming, 1.5 is the key figure that everybody is looking at and everyone is measuring. In 2023, we hit that a number of times. That means a change in everything that we do. That means a change in the way in which crops growing. That means a change in the way in which birds are housed. That is absolutely fundamental. I'm just going to click on to the next slide, which for me is actually even more shocking, which shows the number of days in 2023 of a global record temperature and air. So of the 365 days in 2023, 208 of them had record temperature. That just boggles my mind to some degree. And as I say, that is fundamentally not going to mean just that corporates need to change, such as us. It is going to mean your accessibility to feed, the quality of feed, the types of wheat that are coming through, the way in which soy is grown, the accessibility of soy, the stocking density, even down to what customers want to buy and when they want to buy it, all fundamentally is going to change as a result of this. And that onus shouldn't be in one actor in the supply chain. We all need to come together to understand how we meet these challenges and how we sort of deliver change, but allow ourselves to progress as a business and it still exists as a business, because ultimately we still want to sell chicken. So what does that mean in terms of what we're doing? So we have a commitment as a business to reach net zero by 2040. And we have a number of plans within that at restaurant level, whether that be around reducing waste, or whether that be reducing the amount of food that we're actually wasting at the end of the day, reducing the amount of time our cookers are on, whatever it might be. However, the biggest and largest emission factor within our supply chain is poultry, is our product. So over 70% of KFC's carbon emission comes from chicken and our product within there. So of the products we buy, it is emitting 70% of the carbon emission. The biggest lever within there, as I'm sure you'll all be aware of, is soy. So the biggest way that we can reduce that is basically to move to deforestation and conversion-free soy, which we've committed to do as a business by 2025. Now, that is absolutely the right direction of travel and absolutely what we should do. There are some challenges around data and data flow within there, and how that is operated at a farm level and a market level, and how we have the accessibility to that. However, that is the number one driver for reducing carbon emissions and ultimately reducing the rate at which we saw those temperatures increasing, and we're going to see global warming. So we have to do that. I should have also said right at the beginning, we refer to everything we do in this space as done the right way. It's what the term the Colonel used, and it's the term that we still use today. We want to see everything in our supply chain done the right way. I didn't really think I could stand on this stage without talking about welfare today, so I'm just going to move slightly sidestep away from sustainability and into welfare. As many of you may be aware, we have signed up to the the Better Chicken Commitment. We did that in 2021, and we did that because we know that our customers care about chicken, and chicken welfare is a huge anxiety for them, and we want to remove that as an anxiety. We want people to come through the door and feel happy about their purchases and confident in the product they're buying. We still believe that the BCC is a good framework and it is robust science and it sets out a direction of travel for us as a business, and we're still committed to that from that side. There is a question over the timings and whether the timings are still appropriate based on the large amount of business uncertainty there's been over the last few years with massive inflation, accessibility to feed and various other aspects that we've had. However, the robustness and the system that is in place and the standards that have been set out, we still do believe is the right direction of travel. We also publish something called the Annual Welfare Report for KFC. So we have our own data collection system, which is sets out basically welfare KPIs, and we publish those to the whole of the industry on an annual basis. We think that transparency is really, really important, not only from an NGO perspective, but from a customer perspective as well. So all of that information for the last 4 years is readily available to anybody that wants to see it online. And the other reason I wanted to touch on this today is because to say this isn't going away. People aren't going to stop caring about welfare. NGOs aren't going to stop lobbying about welfare. We need to continue to front into this as an industry, and we need to work out how we can do that. It needs to be commercially viable for everybody, and that doesn't need to be just pushed down onto the producer and for the producer to take all of that burden. But we do need to face into the fact this isn't going away as a subject area, and this coupled with the sustainability side of things actually is pushing us towards lower stocking density to some degree anyway. I'll end it there because I just had 8 minutes, and then we're going to do some questions and answers at the end. And I just wanted to end by saying people love chicken, like people love KFC. Here's like the pictures of people enjoying it. Like, let's work together for that to continue and for us to have a robust industry and continue to grow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. So a brief introduction from me. This presentation's purely done from a primary producer perspective. Poultry is in a fantastic position. More than 40% of the meat we eat in Britain is chicken, making it the nation's favourite meat by far. According to the statistics from the British Poultry Council, the average Brit consumes 35 kilos of poultry a year. However, this sentiment is not always echoed at primary producer level. According to the NFU's Poultry Intentions Surveys of November 2023, it found 15% of broiler producers were either unlikely or unsure if they would still be producing beyond November 2025. The work found that 2/3 of broiler producers had no plans to reinvest in their businesses over the next 2 years. This begs the question, why should an industry with such good retail sales have such low producer confidence? The main reason stated in the NFU survey was insufficient returns on funds. Affordability has been one of the main driving forces behind the growing popularity of poultry meats, but it has led to dwindling farm gate prices and poor returns on investment. Limited reinvestment at primary producer level has been caused by a number of factors: build cost inflation, increased planning restrictions, and inflations in raw materials, labour and energy that has not been reflected in farm gate pricing. Our current industry approach with the race to the bottom on price and a race to top on welfare standards is totally unsustainable. But do not for a minute think that farmers are anti-improvements in welfares. This is simply not the case. Welfare and productivity go hand in hand, and for the betterment of the industry, both are a must. But improvements in welfare lead to an increased cost in production, and this must be reflected in the market price. Presently, too much emphasis has been placed upon affordability. This has led to an increase, particularly in the wholesale sector, of cheap imports. Imports that are produced using methods that would be illegal in the UK. Given that the UK is not self-sufficient in poultry meat, I understand imports are inevitable. However, as a primary producer, I would implore the government that any future trade deals within UK agriculture, I must implore the government that any future trade deals must support UK agriculture. We do not mind competition, but we must start with a level playing field. New government's proposals on food labelling offer a glimmer of hope on the horizon. Mandatory country of origin label will raise awareness amongst consumers, allowing them more choice to make informed decisions while shopping. However, I believe there is much work needed on the current proposals for welfare labelling. A system that only measures inputs and not outcomes will end up placing over 90% of UK poultry in the same tier as UK legal baseline, undoing years of hard work and investments to better our methods of production. It is one such change to our production methods that I want to talk about next. The move to 30 kilos. I believe this move offers several opportunities for UK poultry, but also has the potential to bring with it its own challenges. It reaffirms retail commitment to source UK-only poultry in fresh offerings, but could this be extended to the value-added range, further reducing the threats of imports to our sector? The reduced stocking densities will improve performance and welfare, but subsequently, this will lead to an increased cost of production. The race for space will be one of the biggest challenges facing the poultry sector over the next 18 months. By reducing the stocking densities by 20%, we will need 20% more floor space just to stand still. As mentioned in my previous slides, producer confidence is low and massive investment in shed building is needed. Some estimates believe that the investment will put 15 to 20 pence a kilo on the price of a chicken. With so much emphasis being placed on affordability, is this move market-led? How much market demand will there be for increasing the price of a whole chicken by nearly 50 pence? With not all retailers currently signed up to the pledge, I only guess that time will tell and consumer shopping habits will be the real indicator of this. Is the time frame to move to 30 kilos realistic? What if this time frame proves too tight? With most planning applications and build times running way beyond 12 months, will we have enough time to build the extra sheds needed? Will this lead to shortages on shelves? And how will any such shortages be filled? Finally, will planning restrictions and environmental permitting allow the industry to build the sheds that are needed? Environmental credentials and nutrient neutrality. Environmentally, I believe that the poultry sector has a fantastic story to tell, and one that often gets neglected when marketing our produce. Our intensive production methods, and paralleled with the need to cut costs, profitability, and remain profitable, means that over a third of poultry farms already have renewable energy on site. Our FCRs are the envy of other agricultural sectors. Better genetics and improvement in feed technologies will allow us the potential to drive these feed conversion rates even lower. I believe that sustainability and its metrics will play a huge role in poultry meat in the coming years. The need for processors and retailers to publish their scope-free emissions will further drive our state sustainability credentials. I believe there are fantastic opportunities for the industry to make significant steps towards net zero. Although with no set baseline from which to measure our improvements, I believe this may hamstring those producers who have already made significant steps. If I use my own business as an example, we have already installed 250 kilowatts of solar PV, and our scope for expansion is limited due to our single-phase grid connection. We have biomass supplying heat to all of our sheds. All of our sheds are fitted with LED lights, and our older sheds have recently been re-insulated. As a business, we are struggling to see where further on-farm improvements can be made, particularly if reducing our carbon footprints becomes part of our future contract agreements. Whereas farms that have made little or no sustainability within their business models can easily make the improvements needed. The industry's reliance on soya has significant impacts upon our journey to net zero. My business's most recent carbon footprint had a whopping 90% of the footprint linked to feed. Although huge strides have been made in reducing and finding alternatives to soya, until a whole industry approach is taken, I cannot see a way forward. Perhaps with all elements of the supply chain focusing on reducing emissions, this will become more achievable. Although many poultry units have sustainability ingrained in their business models, poultry's environmental credentials in recent months has taken a huge hit. The current situation surrounding water quality and the role commercial poultry has played within the Wye Valley is deeply regrettable and indefensible. The ramifications for future expansion within our sector, in particularly shed building and environmental permitting, are huge. There is undoubtedly a wider piece of work that is needed right across the agricultural sector to improve our application of organic matters. I do believe there are solutions already in place that can benefit the poultry industry greatly. These include combustible plants for poultry manure, as well as micro-AD plants on farms using poultry manure as an input. The solution, unfortunately, does not come cheaply, and a huge investment is required before the solutions can be realised. Finally, the last area I wanted to talk to you about is labour. Since I have sat on the NFU's National Poultry Board, access to labour has been something we have discussed endlessly. Put simply, there are not enough people willing to work in the poultry sector, and since Brexit, this fact has been compounded. We have lobbied the government tirelessly to allow us more access to foreign labour, and some ground has been made, but unfortunately perhaps not enough. The second big issue facing the industry is the availability of affordable labour. As mentioned earlier, we have a sector presently geared to ensure that poultry meat is accessible to all by its pricing strategy. With costs being cut and profit margins weakening, those of us who can find labour can little afford to pay them. However, I do believe there are solutions to our problems. With the old proverb claiming, necessity is the mother of all inventions, I believe that automation and greater reliance on technology within the poultry sector will become the norm. Our ability to attract and retain staff will lead to automation in all aspects of poultry. Finally, I wanted to talk to you about the use of artificial intelligence within the sector. This is something I am currently adopting and developing on my own farm. I believe the possibilities to improve overall performance and welfare are huge. Through a combination of AI, surveillance monitoring, and data inputting, I believe we can develop management tools that can assist and progress our day-to-day running of our units, reducing the staffing pressures seen across the industry. To conclude, I believe there are many opportunities for poultry meat going forward. Our market share is undeniable. Our popularity with consumers never greater. Our greatest asset, namely affordability, is perhaps also our biggest weakness. Most of the potential problems I have discussed, thankfully, have solutions to them. Unfortunately, these solutions come as a price. If the large investment that is needed is shared fairly throughout the supply chain, then I believe there is a bright future for all involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much there, Will. So some really common themes coming out there from different perspectives from both Will and Ruth, namely around kind of sustainability, labour, and the kind of welfare side of things. We've now got about 15 minutes for questions. Have we got any questions from the audience? Gentlemen at the back.
For KFC, when they're moving towards a slow and growing bird, how does that play into sustainability when it's going to have a higher carbon footprint?
Super interesting question, and one I have posed to CIWF a number of times. It doesn't, does it? You know, those two things are competing in terms of priorities, and being really honest, that's something we're grappling with a business as to how you juggle that and which of those priorities should take number one, and at what timescales you can bring those through at. if at all. I think what we need to do, and why I sort of tongue-in-cheek mentioning it to CI, I have had those conversations with CIWF, is we need to face into that. Ultimately, as I said within the presentation, the framework set out by the BCC is robust in its science, and it does improve bird welfare. And that's ultimately, I think, what all of us want in the room is to have happier, healthier, inverted commas, birds. But we do need to balance what that means and find innovative ways to deal with that, whether that be through feed additives or, if we can get the overall reduction of a carbon footprint down, what does that then allow us to do in terms of breed?
I think that's an interesting point, Ruth, and again, I guess reassuring that those conversations and that you recognise that tension, because I think there are a number of things on the marketplace, carbon reduction in soya, that there are tensions that exist, and so important that it is recognised by the food service sector and by yourselves. Any other questions from the audience? There we go.
I was just wondering how price conscious your consumers really are with all of these increases in costs. At what point do they stop buying from you?
Ruth?
Not one for well. It has a huge impact. Certainly for a business like ours, where people are often not necessarily planning to eat out of the home when they go to eat out of the home. Often that is a spur of the moment decision. We have seen prices stabilise across the out of home market in the last 6 months or so, but certainly all of us, our competitors, were hit by that in the last 12 months, where we have had to increase prices as a result of inflation coming through the supply chain. That has hit sales in one way or another. So what we've done is we've looked at innovative ways that we can bring the overall price down. So we've now introduced something called a snack menu, which is very similar to the McDonald's snack menu, which is essentially smaller items, which are available at a lower price point to ensure that we're not turning customers off, and there is the availability for customers to still buy into products.
I guess, Will, turning that to you equally, cost is a challenge within the whole supply chain. Consumers are looking for cost down, as Ruth is kind of intimated. What kind of things are you doing or seeing on a farm level to try and manage that cost and drive efficiency on a day-to-day basis?
I think Ruth's been talking about sustainability. A lot of the work we've done on farm to become more sustainable has actually come about through us becoming more efficient. So a lot of it really does work hand in hand. But a lot of the tech and things I talked about are, reducing. You've now essentially got eyes on the birds 24/7. You are making informed decisions, without going into the birds. So you are, saving man hours, saving time. So there are little things. Probably haven't answered that as well as I could have done, but yeah.
Thanks, Will. Any other questions from the audience? You mentioned there, Will, I guess in terms of technology, AI being something that you've started to use on farm. Can you elaborate on that in terms of, because it's a hot topic, it comes up at a number of events. How are you practically using AI in your day-to-day?
So I've been working with an AI company, and we've been looking at, it initially started just as a bird weighing company, and we were just allowing AI to weigh the birds for us. We have since developed that. We are now looking at animal behaviors. We are looking, so in particular, huddling's one we've been looking at. We've also been looking at feeder and drinker activity. So one of the interesting things we found, particularly on my farm, is we were seeing when our birds came out of the dark periods, we were seeing huge stresses upon their feeders and drinkers. There was a lot of birds trying to get to a feeder and drinker and they couldn't. So that was causing a stress to the birds. So we've changed our twilight time. We now have almost an hour of twilight between the dark periods, which some people say, oh, that's far too much. But what we've been seeing recently is birds feeding in feeding and drinking during a period where the human eye would probably say that was too dark. If you look at birds on a morning when you wake up, there's birds singing in the dark. Birds see at a much lower lighting level than we do, and we've developed that. And since that, we've installed this hour twilight. We have seen, no feeder and drinker pressures. Birds are feeding and drinking as they want. So by the time the lights come on, you've got completely normal activity, and that's something we've also implemented post thinning. That used to be a huge stress. If you withdraw feed from a bird and then return it, there's huge stresses on the bird. So we've also implemented things like that. It's at the really early stage at the moment, Danny, but some of the findings have been really, really interesting.
One of the things that we talked to, and I think we've all mentioned in terms of challenges for the industry, is talent retention and training. I mean, I guess in terms of the investment and use of technology on farm, what challenges is that providing in terms of educating your staff or getting different sorts of training into the the way that you bring people into your business?
I'm a sole trader, a family farm. We haven't actually got any staff. The way we've developed it is to be as simple as possible, to input raw data and our metrics. I mean, if I use my father as an example, and I'm quite glad he's not here. He's 65 years old and he hates technology with a passion. I mean, the man forgets his Apple ID every single day, but yet he has taken it on board like a fish to water. The key thing when we've been developing it is to make it farmer friendly, to make it as simple as possible to get the biggest outcomes. So in terms of training, there's a little bit there. There's not a lot there. It's the technology and the building of the algorithms that is doing the work for you.
And I guess again, you both touched upon the challenges of the move to 30 kgs and the welfare. Ruth, I have to ask this question. From one of the things as an industry, I guess we're grappling with is that time frame. Is from a retailer or food service perspective, what kind of timeframes are we looking at in terms of implementing this change, which is a significant one for our industry? So how will that decision, I guess, be made? And what kind of timescales do you think it will take? I know that might be a difficult question for you to answer.
It is a difficult question and one I'm not going to answer. However, for us personally as a business, we are very reliant on our competitors. So I'm not sure how many people are aware in the way in which KFC birds are taken, but we primarily take from thin. We take very, very small birds, which means we have no dedicated flocks. So we are basically taking from the flocks of UK retailers. So we are and I think in terms of our BCC commitment, that was made quite clear, and that sounds like a get out of jail free card. It's not, but it was made quite clear in our BCC commitment for that reason, in that we cannot do that in isolation. We physically, from a supply chain perspective, are unable to do that without a huge change. So in terms of timescale for us, we're kind of beholden on others. We're obviously seeing a catalogue of direction of travel from people across the industry, either moving that way, having done that, or making the commitment to do that. I would probably like to see perhaps a bit more collaboration and kind of push that a little bit back to the NGOs for them to be facilitating that and facilitating those conversations around that, so that people can be more joined up on timescales. And I understand why a lot of the big retailers would not have done that. But for us smaller guys, we take around 3% of poultry from the UK, 3 to 4%. So we are not significant in terms of being able to do that. I think the only way that direction can be made is through the collaboration with the smaller people.
Fair answer, Ruth. I had to ask the question. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, thank you. The microphone is coming over to you.
Hi, one for Will. You mentioned about poultry manure that, and what you can do with it. Do you mind just elaborating a little bit more on that piece?
Yeah, so if we take the current situation in the Wye Valley, a lot of that poultry manure is just exported out of the county. Now, that isn't necessarily the answer to the problem. So there's been a lot of research and a lot of things doing it. So there are muck burning plants available. So you can have an on-farm muck burner that supplies heat through sort of like a biomass system where the fuel is poultry manure. And then also on the micro AD plants, you can use poultry manure as one of the inputs into the AD plants to produce, electricity. So there are other options for poultry manure rather than just spreading it on lands. I mean, that isn't to say that poultry manure isn't a fantastic thing for land. There just needs to be a piece of work on making sure that our use of poultry manure as a fertilizer is done in an appropriate way, through soil testing, through making sure that the nutrients that are needed are spread on land so there's not any excess. I hope that's answered your question.
Anything else, guys? No? Well, look, I think that then draws us to a close today. Anyone that was wanting to listen to Justin Coleman, he will be here tomorrow if you're here, so he'll be added to the panel tomorrow. But that just leaves me to say thank you for your time, thank you for listening this afternoon. Have a great rest of the show, and we will see you soon. Thank you very much.